Hello and welcome back to this edition of the Blame Game. This weekend was so good for setting up amazing battles as we head into the final weekend of the LCS. There is the battle at the top of the table for first place between 100 Thieves and EG. There's the question of, can CLG force Team Liquid into fourth yet again and grab third for themselves? Will C9 keep falling? Then there's the crazy four-way race for playoffs at the bottom of the standings. And that's actually where this episode is going to start. And then we'll talk about Blaber a little bit later on. Immortals came into the weekend with some weird momentum despite going 0-2 the week before because they played the two best teams in the league and actually looked pretty competitive against them. Unfortunately, that loss streak extended to 3 games, this time against Dignitas, who was at the time universally considered to be one of the worst teams in the league. Lost Draven in particular got torn apart by the community for being too passive and useless. The game does start pretty slowly for Immortals. They have pressure in lane on the bot side, which turns into a fast first Drake, but from there, the resources mostly go top side and mid, with Ignar frequently leaving lane to roam, but this does make some sense given that you have a Yone on the top side and first Rift Herald is spawning soon. At the second dragon, which Dignitas contests, Lost gets a massive cash-in and is almost a full item ahead of his opponents after the reset. You would think that this is the perfect time to start focusing on the Draven's lane, right? Wrong. What follows is an absolutely terrible run of play by Immortals. Off this reset, they use the Rift Herald mid to just get some turret plates for Orianna. Why is this such a bad decision? Because you're going to get hard outscaled by the Ornn, Viego, and Aphelios no matter what you do. And you have 2 side laners who with an injection of gold can theoretically start snowballing and trying to take over the game. Orianna with this gold does nothing with it. She's not going to have any severe influence over the game, and even with this, doesn't really roam to any side lanes. I know the timer was getting low in Kenvi's pocket, but there's absolutely no reason that this couldn't have been dropped in the bot lane and then just kind of follow the Rift Herald and scored it in. Coming off that push, at least finally Ignar and Lost are going to lane together, right? They clear this one wave and they recall and reset for Ignar. 30 seconds on the map and already Lost, the most fed member in the game, is back in base. Now, Dig does have control of the bot side here, but you don't need to completely abandon the lane, especially since, sure enough, Dig still controls the bot half of the map after the reset, and now Lost is zoned off his turret. Don't worry, it gets worse. At 15 minutes, XU shows on a gank topside, and bot lane for Dignitas has just reset. Do Immortals press into the Dig side of the map and start taking the turret with their shove and zoning the Dignitas bot lane off the turret since they are on the weak side? Nope, they leave bot lane again because Rift Herald is spawning soon. When they realize that it's going to be free, Lost turns back around to head bot lane, but is again zoned off the turret. I have to stop down and talk about this. I have 2 things to say. First off, this is just a horrible understanding of win cons by Immortals. While the gold lead has grown during this 10 to 15 minute window, it hasn't grown in the ways that will meaningfully impact the game. And I know that people are tired of me talking about team mistakes on the blame game. It's a meme of this show because they want to blame individuals, but realistically, this shit is why teams drop games so much more than did this guy press a button at the right time or were his right clicks accurate. If your fundamentals are bad, it is hard to be in a position where your clicks are what decide the game. There's a baseline level of macro and coordination that is required, which then puts the emphasis on mechanics. But if you're not putting yourself in a position to actually exploit the map, then it doesn't really matter. This is the reason why so many players that play on top teams look like fucking gods, and as soon as they're off them, they seem to fall off a cliff. It's not because they became shitters overnight, but that the teams that they're playing with are worse, and they don't work together the way that they need to actually blow games open. By that same metric, they weren't actually super individually smurfing when they were on these top teams. It's just that they worked better to exploit leads on the map, and it's something that doesn't usually get used correctly by teams in the bottom of the standings. The other thing I want to stress is that this stuff hasn't lost Immortals the game yet. They're still in it. And if you guys demand a sacrifice on the blame game, well, here you go. Revenge has no flash or ult after that gank in the top lane and TPs into the middle of this bot push to try and punish Dignitas for overextending, but really just hands a kill over 5v4. At 17 minutes, Ignar sees Blue recall in a ward and thinks that he can make a play, but the rest of Dignitas is still around, and Blue TPs back in, which cuts Lost off from being able to run forward. And overall, this play loses the team 3 flashes right before Dragon spawns. This is combined with everyone blowing ults to kill Biofrost just as that Dragon spawns, meaning it's nearly impossible to win the following team fight, and splitting through this quarter doesn't really help at all, and Revenge drops yet again. At the third Dragon fight, Revenge actually zones Blue away from the fight. They have the option to play with their super strong Draven, but instead, Revenge decides to get pants, and Kenvi runs into Narvnia to join in that 2v1. Why play around your 3-item Draven when you can play around the 2-item 0-2 Yone? People said Lost didn't look aggro, and that's somewhat true, but even when the game got away from them, in some of the team fights he still got plenty of auto attacks out. The one horrible mistake by Lost that I absolutely cannot defend in this blame game was being blind to the Ornn pillar and dying right as a critical Baron fight was starting. I can't defend this, it's awful. He just didn't see it because the pillar is blue and the river is blue. However, rewind that, and what the fuck is Reddit talking about being late to this fight? He was getting mid-prio for his team, which is 100% the right thing to do considering Baron's not even close to being finished. He is exactly on time. Okay, the more that I reviewed this game, the madder that I got. Lost was fine for 95% of this game and made one critical mistake. But Reddit has such a hate boner for him, they just have to make up shit that happened and say that it's his fault. And it's getting upvoted. Meanwhile, Revenge, Kenvi, and Ignar are griefing most of the game and no one says anything. I'm not even really mad at them. I'm more mad at the community for how shit it can be sometimes. I mean, this is the reason that I do the blame game. Okay, I feel like I owe the fans a bit of an olive branch after that one. Let's look at Blaber's Wukong game from this weekend against 100 Thieves, where people were memeing his performance and going so far as to say that he was exposed. It's safe to say that Blaber's Wukong is not the same energy as his Olaf. Blaber's panic flash into river during this counter gank, as opposed to into lane, gives closer an extremely easy chase down. His flash onto Sivir shows an overestimation of his personal damage, or how easily he will stick to Sivir. It's not Olaf, buddy. This re-engage in the bot skirmish gives Abbedagge the first reset he needs to go absolutely hamburgers and chase down the rest of his team. And finally, this engage over the wall here is a good angle in theory, but there's no combo potential since Fudge is Mininar and Neela needs to heal off the wave and can't suction them. The PvP aspect of his Wukong game left a lot to be desired, but Blaber was still generally doing the right thing in the early game, like shoving mid when Abba is making this extended play in the bot lane. Or when FBI gets his recall interrupted by Sven multiple times, they make sure to get the bot turret off Blaber's Rift Herald. He even had the critical re-engage mid lane, which set up Cloud9 to have a foothold back into the game, playing the fight to the hill and never giving up on the play, which eventually gives them a Baron angle, and it's actually Jensen who squanders that by neither DPSing the Baron nor stopping 100 Thieves from contesting. Blaber is a super aggro jungler who is always looking for an angle into the fight. It is what makes him such a dominant jungler when him and his team are executing on those angles. I wouldn't say this game exposed him in any way, but it is fair to note when he fires off a couple of air balls. That's gonna do it for this week of the blame game. It's the last week of the regular season coming up. It starts on Friday because it's a super week. That means that there's 3 days of games, 3 games for each team, and it's gonna be so hyped because it's the last week of the regular season this year before heading into eventually Worlds in North America. This is the beginning of that slow, ramp up to launch. And I'm really excited to see where these teams are going to end the regular season with so much positioning still available.
Hello. I'm out front of the LCS. I'm sitting down because it's a hot day in Los Angeles, and I need to keep cool. And you know what else needs to be cool? Your computer, which is why you should check out Alienware, because they've got some of the best cooling tech in the biz for both desktops and notebooks so that your computer can stay cool while you're staying cool by having an Alienware, which is also cool, and watching this content that is also cool. And do you ever just say a word so often, so many times that it starts to lose, there's like significance. It's like starts to sound weird in your mouth, and like there's a word for that. And anyway, there's a link in the description below. Check it out.